Hey, I'm Audrey Hope. Thanks for joining me for another episode of Hope for Relationships. I am the Soul Love Healer. And today we're going to hear from Mary from Austin, Texas, who wants to know how powerful is protesting. Please join me. Healing is so unbelievably simple. You do what needs to be done, and that's it. Over. Problem solved. Thanks for joining me so we can heal all our issues from the deep level of the soul. Today, Mary writes, my husband and I got into a big argument. It was about protesting that is going on in our world. He says that protests do not work and everyone is wasting their time, especially the women. This is upsetting to me and I'm so mad. What do you think about all this protesting and what can I tell my husband? Mary, this is an amazing question. We're going to take it from two levels. First, the spiritual. There is so much power in numbers, so much power in the collective. And from a spiritual level, there's been many eras, many cycles where we've tried to bring in the light and evolve the planet. But it just hasn't worked because we haven't had the math. We haven't had the collective. We haven't had the support. We haven't had the pillars of the people holding up the change. Now you look at the numbers of protesters, you see it, it's astounding. And so we spiritually need this collective because we're going to do it this time and it's going to be amazing. And another thing from a spiritual level is that the gateways are opened. They are now easy to get through into the spiritual realm and everyone is invited. So a good thing to do is in meditation or in your vision is to close your eyes and all the people you don't get along with, all the people, Republicans, Democrats, just kind of say, hey, come on over. You're invited into the light. If you look at it from this level, you will see so many people want this change. Even if on, a realistic, practical level, they're not admitting it. People really want to be in the light. And so this is a very auspicious, exciting time. And now for the practical. Do protests really work? Well, I investigated this and I did some research because there's so much hope when we really see what has changed from protesting. So I just want to share this with the audience and it's really astounding. Okay, of course we know the Montgomery bus boycotts. This is when Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat to a white passenger in Montgomery, Alabama. Well, this started a whole civil rights thing, right? Well, a year later, the U.S. Supreme Court made it unconstitutional for there to be segregation on buses. Amazing. And Rosa Parks, this funny thing that she said, she said people thought I was tired. She said they always say I didn't give up my seat because I was so tired, but that wasn't true. I was not tired physically or more tired than I usually was at the end of the working day, and I was not old. Although some people have an image of me as being old, I was 42. And so the only thing I was tired of was giving in. So that's really inspiring. Then we have Gandhi, the Salt March of 1930. Well, Gandhi led a peaceful protest, walking towards the Arabian Sea because Indians were not allowed to take salt from the sea. Well, this was amazing because they walked for 240 miles in 23 days. And yes, it's true, it took 17 years, but eventually India got freedom from Britain. So yes, protests do work. The next thing that really hit my heart was the Delano Grape boycott with Cesar Chaves in 1960. Well, he led a 25-day hunger strike, a non-violent hunger strike, and then 5 years, he got 17 million Americans to boycott grapes. Well, what do you think happened? They got the legislation to stop the abuse of American farmers. And it was Chaves who said, I am convinced that the truest act of courage, the strongest act of humanity, is to sacrifice ourselves for others in a totally nonviolent struggle for justice. Okay? Then we have the March on Washington, August 28th, 1963. That's when Martin Luther King Jr. did the famous I Have a Dream speech. Well, 200,000 people gathered at the Lincoln Memorial to walk peacefully for racial inequality. And what do you think happened? This inspired President John F. Kennedy to enact legislation for civil rights in 1964 and then to get the vote in 1965. And then we have the Berlin Wall protest, November 9th, 1989. Well, this for 28 years, there was a wall dividing East and West. And then for 2 months, 1 million people protested. And then on November 9th, 1989, yay, the wall came down. It was incredible. Another one, a funny one, was the singing revolution of Estonia. Yes, people actually sang their way into freedom. They sang for 5 days, 100,000 people in song, and it's known as the Singing Revolution. And then in 1991, they got independence. Well, of course, we have the famous Bastille Day, the storming of the Bastille in July 14, 1789. We know what happened to overthrow King Louis XVI, and then we know what happened to Marie Antoinette. So, yes, the French Revolution was started. And then, my favorite of all time, which we can all relate to now, the Boston Tea Party. This was December 16, 1773. Well, Samuel Adams and his Sons of Liberty, they disguised themselves as Mohawk Indians, and they dumped 92,000 pounds of tea into the harbor. And of course, the British responded harshly. But this escalated into the American Revolution. So this was a fight from 1765 to 1783. But guess what we got? The Declaration of Independence, our Constitution. So we got our government with a legislative branch, Congress, and an executive branch. And this is what happens. And this is what John Adams stated. This is the most magnificent movement of all. There is a dignity, a majesty, a sublimity in this last effort of the patriots that I so greatly admire. This destruction of the tea is so bold, so daring, so firm, so intrepid, and so inflexible, and it must have such important consequences and be so lasting that I cannot but consider it an epocha in history. And I could speak for hours about the women's movement and what that was, but just think, in 1913, 500 courageous women in the parade called the Suffrage Parade of 1913 marched. And it did not have such great consequences. People ended up in the hospital, the men tried to block the women, but what do you think happened? The 1920 19th Amendment secured the vote for women 7 years later. So amazing. And they said to ask for freedom is not a crime. And of course, we have the Women's March on Saturday, January 21st of 2017, which made record history for the largest protests. So, Mary, you ask, does protesting work? Well, I call it divine walking. And yes, it does, because it's a spiritual movement, the power of the people, and it is going to move things, and we're going to make a new history. So hang on in there and just watch. And thank you so much for your question, Mary. If you have a soul question, you can contact me in the comments below, or you can write to me on my Facebook, my Instagram, my Twitter. The links are in the description box. And don't forget to like and subscribe so we can continue to heal all our issues from the deep level of the soul. I'm Audrey Hope, and thank you. Hey, if you like my videos, and I hope you do, then subscribe and click. Are you gonna click? Come on, click here now. Let's go.